I'm a chiropractor, Markus from Finland, and I have a very special guest today from Houston, Texas, Dr. Robert Rakowski. He's a chiropractor, he's a clinical nutritionist, he's a kinesiologist with engineering background. He has almost 30 years of experience treating critically ill patients and Olympic level athletes. I would call him as a Superman of health. I think I haven't never met any person who has that experience and knowledge about the physical, mental, chemical, and spiritual aspects of human being. Today we talk about a little bit what is the true pandemic in the world. How are you, Dr. Bob, today? And thank you for your time and this Easter morning.
You know, you are very welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity to share. And one thing I'll do is share my screen, because I've been enjoying literally every day creating updates for the world. You mentioned that I have nearly 30 years of clinical practice. This is my 28th year, and I have had the joy of treating patients at the entire spectrum. So I have seen people that were sent home to die with, you know, medical conditions that were not resolving, and their life was slipping away. And then I've also treated the end of the spectrum of multiple time world champion athletes and some of the best athletes in the history of the planet. By the way, some of these critical patients, 25 years ago who told they were going to die are alive and thriving today. Many cases, have resolved against medical wisdom because, when you give the body what it needs, the body wants to be healthy. I have also taught over 10,000 hours of continuing education to doctors now on 6 continents. The only continent I've missed is Antarctica. I'd like to get a seminar going there someday. And by the way, besides being a doctor, I like to consider myself a scientist, right? So I've got a degree in electrical engineering. I've got a degree in human biology. I actually have a nursing degree, so I've seen the medical side. I am a chiropractor with advanced certifications in kinesiology, acupuncture, and nutrition. And there's just one simple reason for that. I love human beings. I love helping them get the most out of their life. And, you mentioned mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, social, financial impact. All those things are important. So ultimately, that's my goal for everybody I interact with. But where do you want to start on this pandemic?
Why did you end up not doing just a chiropractic? Why did you start doing also helping with patients with chronic diseases? What leads you that path?
I found that it took more than just balancing their structure to help people get better. And so, I started clinical practice in 1992. And you look back and the world was probably more nourished in 1992 than it is now. What we've known now for, 60 or 70 years, farmers found out that they could grow big plants with 3 elements, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But it takes 30 elements to make healthy plants, animals, and humans. So the farmers used that fertilizer, NPK, and ultimately depleted the soil. And that's a global fact. All the world governments realize that global depletion of minerals is causing problems for plants, animals, and those of us at the top of the food chain, humans. But I found out very early that my patients were not getting better, with just structural care. So I started looking deeper. What else can I do? I studied acupuncture, I studied nutrition, and I came to realize the more I did for my patient, the more I improved their chemistry, the more I decreased the stress in their body and in their lifestyle, the faster they got better, because it all works together.
And I also I have understood you have quite early start about this nutrition work, because now we talk about, at least here in Finland, 5-10 years there has been this term functional medicine, but you have been involved in that quite a long time, and even with this Jeffrey Bland, I understood, with the father of functional medicine.
So Jeffrey Bland is considered the founder and the father of functional medicine, and the first year I took a Jeff Bland seminar was 1993. And I was the really excited student. I showed up early. I sat in the front row. I took pages of notes. And I looked at him. I said, Dr. Bland, this is so much material. This really needs to be a 2-day seminar. And he looked at me and says, well, with my schedule, that just won't happen. So I started studying his material, teaching his material, and really getting a nice following that 3 years later than that, by 1996, he and I were doing a tag team seminar series around North America and Latin America, and just, making the world better. He would do the super hard science because he's really good at that. And I would do the clinical application. And in fact, in many ways, I think I pioneered the clinical application of functional medicine in a way where we could make vast differences in every category of human.
I want to ask about, because in my opinion, the true pandemic in the world today is this our poor health. And what do you think about this idea of poor health causing very big pandemic here in the world, and loads of these chronic diseases and even death?
I think that people that understand health are all going to agree with you. So, there's this term called epigenetics, which literally means above the genes. So we have our genetics, we have what we have received from our parents, and they got from their parents and their parents. And human genetics haven't changed much at all. And some would argue in the past 100,000 years, human genetics have not changed much. But when we look at epigenetics, the factors above the genes that control, which is really our entire environment, it has changed very dramatically. We used to eat natural foods from natural sources in season. There were no additives, there were no preservatives, there were no insecticides, herbicides, fungicides. There were none of the 87,000 registered toxic chemicals in the environment. The soil was rich. People moved their body. They honored their circadian rhythm. They had activity during the daylight hours, and they slept when it was dark. These are things that we were designed to do, and somehow we've moved away a great distance from natural. We have unnatural light, we have unnatural food, we create exercise routines that are not functional movement patterns. We sit in a machine and we move our body in a way that wouldn't move us anywhere near functional. We don't walk on uneven surfaces. We have things on our feet that scrunch our toes and make some of the most powerful parts of our body completely and totally dysfunctional. And, so we're replacing all kinds of joints, and we're shooting people with stem cells. And, by the time you get to be 60 years old here in the US, the average person has taken 5 different drugs to suppress symptoms of poor living. And, where does it end? Well, it doesn't have a happy ending for most people. If I look at the world data, and I might just show this for a moment, I'll share this screen. Find a way to do that real quick. When I do my updates on what's going on with the COVID circumstance, there's also something called the Worldometer, where we look at what's killing people around the world. And so we look, and we've had 3.5 million deaths from infectious disease. We've had over 11 million abortions in the world. 41 million people are infected with HIV. I didn't have suicides on this graph, but I had it on the previous. But suicide in major developed countries is a top 10 cause of death around the world. Yet our world is so abundant. There's probably never been a better time to be on the planet. There's so much opportunity. There's so much wealth. If people could, just reach a little deeper for health strategies, they'd feel great. But we have a medicated, sad, stressed, sick, fat, lazy society. And I hate to call it that abruptly, but that is what we're dealing with.
About this lifestyle and effects to the health, and you have seen patients all kind of with problems with 30 years. Is that important? What do you say?
To the factor of exercise? Is that the question?
All the lifestyle aspects.
It's all important. I call them the Magnificent Seven. You've got to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right. Every single day. We can break those down one by one if you want.
Yeah, maybe you can a little bit open up those, and we can go back at the later about the pandemic side of things. But first, a little bit about this basics of health. And you have seen, understood so many people, even very, very ill people, getting better, and they have their life back when they do the changes. Is that right?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I would ask my students, and many thousands of students all over the world, I would ask them, what will give you the biggest return on your investment? Stopping something that's harmful for you or taking on a healthy habit? And the vast majority of people would say stopping something harmful, And so one of my classic examples is I had a woman, and this is a very horrible example, but she came in and her complaint was severe headaches. And I said, well, what causes your headache? She says, well, they usually occur after my husband beats me. And I said, okay, well, maybe if we could stop him from beating you, that would probably stop the headaches. Now, we encouraged her to, visit a woman's shelter and things like that. And she ultimately did get away from that stressor, and hopefully he got help too. I never had any follow-up with him, but, if you're doing something harmful to your wellness, the fastest way to get better is to stop doing something harmful. So whether it's too much bad food, too much alcohol, too much negative mind food, people are sitting in front of embellished news, which is designed to share bad news because bad news captures our attention. And people are glued to this information where they think the world is ending. The world is not ending. This is not the killer pandemic. It's not going to wipe us out. All of their estimates are so far off. And that's good news for all of us. But, we want to take on good habits. So if we talk about eating right, we want to have whole natural food sources, grown in the most natural way possible. There's an influential author named Michael Pollan, and he wrote a book called In Defense of Food. And what he said was eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Now I'm going to tweak that in a way in a moment, but one of my great mentors, Jack LaLanne, lived to be in his late 90s, a health icon. He said, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, don't touch it. So to expand on Michael Pollan, I say eat real food, every color, every day, not too much, not too often, in a way that honors your genetics, your lifestyle, and your current goals, mostly plants. So we know that intermittent fasting, eating less often is good. We know that eating less quantity is good. We know that plant-based nutrients are good. We know that every color has different nutrients in it, and that plants, when we eat plants, we get their immune system. But if you're training for a bodybuilding contest, you're going to eat differently than if you're training to run a marathon. It's just, you've got to train in a way that honors your goals, and all of those goals can be healthy. Probably the healthiest thing we can do is find our unique purpose, our mission, and then honor it with our body, mind, and spirit.
And what about the other thing about your magical 7?
Well, we go with drink right. So our world is 2/3 water. My body is 2/3 water. My brain is nearly 75% water, the most hydrated organ in the body. It's suggested that everybody should drink half their body weight in ounces, each day, or, take the pounds and get half that amount, or maybe, use kilograms. However many kilograms you have that many ounces per day is a pretty good analysis. You're in Finland. Am I right on that?
Yes. Yeah.
Finland has the world's highest per capita consumption of coffee. It's estimated that Finns drink 9 cups of coffee a day. So it was published as a top trend in the world to consume healthy coffee that has herbs in it that make it better. So I drink coffee that has reishi in it, also known as Ganoderma, which, by the way, has powerful immune and antiviral benefits. We have teas that do the same. But if you're going to drink coffee or tea, why not take that to the next level? And this is the way most of the world hydrates. I like to call coffee and tea, if it's healthy coffee and tea, turbocharged water, because it has antioxidants, it has plant nutrients. There are thousands of studies on the anti-cancer benefits of green tea. There are thousands of studies on coffee, and people that drink the most coffee actually live the longest. In our part of the world, coffee is America's #1 source of antioxidants. So just make sure you make good choices with what you hydrate yourself with. Don't be drinking soft drinks, either regular or diet. Those are not good for you. Alcohol is very, very interesting. People that drink a little alcohol live longer than people that don't drink any alcohol. but people that drink the most die the earliest. When we come to think right, there is so much data on meditation, and meditation may be the opposite of thinking. Meditation is calming the mind, but there's now really solid systems to train our brain's ability to focus. I use a device daily, a computer algorithm called NeuroTracker. And you follow 3D balls on the screen and you see where it goes, and you can see your ability to follow multiple targets simultaneously in 3D, and it's proven to increase your focus. Major sports teams are working with this because it's actually proven to increase their athletic performance. If you can enhance your ability to focus and think right, give yourself a command and follow it, well, then you increase all of your entire life as long as you're focused on the right things. When it comes to moving right, there's a book called Move Your DNA. And it estimates that 100 years ago, people spent about 60 hours a week in movement, really good movement. They had to move to get their food. They had to move to make their living. They didn't have remote controls for TVs. They didn't have automatic garage doors. They moved their bodies. I'll give a quote from Ben Franklin. I taught an obesity series, in 2006. And Ben Franklin said, in my lifetime, I've seen a few men die of starving, but of eating, 100,000. So even 200 years ago, people were overeating even though they were moving. Now our food has less nutrients in it because we don't have the nutrients. We're always hungry because our body craves nutrition first. And then when we move just to a small fraction of what we were, we have this extreme obesity. Obesity is a risk factor for every known health condition. It's also known to suppress the immune system, to increase the risk of diabetes, to increase inflammatory process, to increase depression, to increase autoimmunity, to increase infection rate. And here in this part of the world, we've got over 40% of the adult population is obese and over 70% is overweight. And all of these people are at higher risk for inflammatory process, depression, infection, and early death. So we want to move our body in a way that honors our body. There's been a movement towards natural movement. And the people that I train with are functional movement specialists. Move your body as it was designed to move. Don't get some kind of made up exercise because you want to look good in the mirror. Looking good is good. That's a good goal. But if you want to look good, fine, but move your body in a way where it moves good, feels good, nourishes the joints, and actually is good. So how much exercise a week? Oh my gosh. In America, the health standards are 150 minutes a week. That's a little more than 20 minutes a day. I'm not sure that's enough, right? If we used to move our body 60 hours 100 years ago, well, we probably want to have at least 5 good hours of movement every single day. Sleep right. There's a world authority on peak performance. His name is Anders Ericsson, and his book is called Peak. And they looked at the best of the best. It didn't matter if it was sports, music, academics, chess. The best of the best of the best slept 8.6 hours a night. Now, the brain is the most nutrient-dependent, energy-dependent, stress-vulnerable, and toxin-vulnerable system in the body. On a day where you're doing intense thinking, that is, in terms of calories, the equivalent of running about 10 miles or 16 kilometers. So how much energy would you burn on that day? A lot. If you're using this a lot, you need to rest it more. And my elite athletes will tell you that elite athletics is 90% mental. And that is why the best of the best in any endeavor sleep 8.6 hours a night. The brain and body recover in that 8.6 hours. Poop right, well, that's talking about detoxifying right. The body has lots of detoxification pathways. I exhale toxins, I sweat toxins. my bowel moves toxins, my liver and kidneys process toxins, and all of those pathways need to work. For a lot of people, bowel function is suboptimal. That's based on fiber, water, and neurologic tone. You should have 1 to 2 good bowel movements every single day. I am always shocked. We ask people, what do you drink? How much do you eat? How often do you poop? How often do you move your body? Some people think it's normal to move their bowels once a week. I personally couldn't even imagine how bad I would feel. I would never in my life could I go that long. If I miss a day, my body feels off. So you definitely want to eliminate using all pathways every single day. The liver requires a lot of energy. It requires a lot of nutrition. So it gets a lot of information because we're energy deprived and we're nutrition deprived, and therefore toxins accumulate within our body. Talk right is the final one. There's a really nice researcher. His name is Bruce Lipton. Number of books. One of them is called The Biology of Belief. But he talks about how every one of our cells, and it's estimated that we're made of 50 trillion cells. Every one of these cells is potentially in communication with every other. And when we have good communication, we have good health in the body. It's proven that one of the very first steps in the cancer process is the cells lose communication. So, if we were in the same room, we would honor each other's distance. We would honor each other's space. We would honor each other's food sources and our ability to enjoy ourselves. Well, cancer cells steal your food, crowd your space, and poop and pee all over you. So they are really bad animals, right? But keep in mind that cancer is a normal process. It's estimated that 99% of people develop between 500 and 1,000 cancer cells a day. So our body's always on guard. A special part of our immune system watches that, called natural killer cells. By the way, these are the same cells that kill viral infected cells. So there are estimated to be, this number will knock your socks off, there are estimated to be 10 quintillion viruses on planet Earth. 10 quintillion. Now that's 10 trillion millions or 10 million trillions, depends on how you want to look at it. A number that is unfathomable. It's also estimated that 67% of our DNA has viral DNA within it. So viruses are a part of where we are. We have a specialized part of our immune system that should be killing that. If our immune system isn't working to deal with a virus, it's also not working to deal with cancer. And in some countries in the world now, cancer is the #1 cause of death. In fact, in Canada, our neighbor just north of here, the #1 cause of death in Canada is cancer. #1 cause of death here in America, heart disease. #2, cancer. But it's a huge killer across the globe, and it's dealing with unhealthy bodies and unhealthy immunity.
I always think about that, who is really responsible of our health, because I feel that we really need to take responsible for ourselves, and of course we need sometimes specialist help like you, or somebody needs a chiropractor, and but this responsibility, I think we have a little bit lost that one. How do you feel about this?
Personal responsibility is the ultimate level of maturity. And so if you have a society that's dependent on government agencies to keep you healthy, well, we already know how that works. It's bankrupting the world. I was at a conference 7 years ago. I was one of the major speakers, and another major speaker was a gentleman named David Katz. And he was at the time the director of preventive research at Yale University. Very credentialed. And so we had 700 doctors in the audience, and Dr. Katz asked this question. He says, okay, guys and ladies, we're going to give you the opportunity right now. You can, play God, and you can eliminate all illness on planet Earth. How many of you would eliminate all illness on planet Earth? I raised my hand, and I think nearly all 700 did. And then Dr. Katz stepped back. He says, well, congratulations. You have just created the greatest economic collapse in human history. Because in the country of the United States of America, 1/3 of every dollar 33 cents of every dollar is spent either making us fat and sick or treating us for being fat and sick. So what kind of economic collapse do we have? Epic, the worst in the history of the game. Now, interestingly enough, they're trying to do this because the society is unhealthy, right? They're shutting down our entire global economy for a virus that many experts say would disappear on its own, like SARS did, like MERS did. There does not appear to be anything special about this except the panic that has been forced on the world. And people that are thinkers on their own and looking at the data, and I'll classify myself as one of those, and you as one of those, and many of my colleagues around the world, they're saying this is the most ridiculous thing they've ever seen.
Now there is this, you mentioned this like panic and fear. So
Yep.
One of my questions I would like to ask about because now it's like extreme level of fear that we are facing now. What do you think about this fear and love aspects, especially this love and joy? How do you see that in our life? And if we are now in this fear mode, maybe we should try to go towards the love again.
We should always go towards love. You know, I mean, if you have a legitimate fear, fear can inspire action. This fear is inspiring inaction, you know, but I'll give a story. So I'm a huge fan of mentors. One of my mentors is a gentleman named Harvey McKay. At age 88, he's in the top 1% of the world in 12 different categories: health, fitness, runs marathons, plays tennis, plays golf like a pro, has a multi-million-dollar business, is one of the top speakers in the world, best-selling author. But he tells a story. He says, so a man was walking in the desert, and as he was walking, he came across both plague and fear walking together. And he asked him, he says, well, guys, what are you doing today? And plague looked at him, he says, we're gonna go to that town over there, and we're gonna kill 10,000 people. And he, you know, the man looked at them and said, wow, you must be a very powerful plague. He says, no, I'm only strong enough to kill the weakest 100. Fear will do the rest. Fear does nothing good for the human body except if you get startled and take action. But there's a term called paralyzed by fear. If you don't know how to deal with fear and a sudden fear comes at you, I'm imagining in Finland you have deer. There's this phenomenon known as deer in the headlights. You're just paralyzed, you don't move, and you get hit by a car. That's what's happening to our world. The fear mongering is so excessive. I don't watch any news. I haven't watched news in the years. Why? Because they are fear mongers. That is very well established. So how do I get my news? I reach out to people who I respect, that are level-headed thinkers, that have good hearts and big minds and want the best for the world. And they say, okay, well, we have a little problem going on here. Have we seen this before? Not this exact bug, but the history of the world is the history of pandemics. Every pandemic has come and gone. They all rise, they all fall in a predictable pattern. We've had SARS, we've had Ebola, we've had H1N1, we've had bird flu, we've had bat flu, we've had camel flu. You know, AIDS might even be considered monkey flu, and these things rise and fall. Now, AIDS is probably the toughest of all of those, but guess what? It is also the most preventable. I don't wish AIDS on anybody. I don't. You know, it's a scourge, and I pray that we find a cure someday. But that one is the exception. So if this is an airborne virus, like it is, it'll come and go like every airborne virus. But there are experts that are saying, if we don't allow society to interact, we don't get to herd immunity, and we're going to keep this around much longer and have a much more devastating effect than if it ran its course.
Maybe now we go a little bit about this detail about this pandemic work you have done, and you mentioned that you have done some work also in aspect of Scandinavia today, and
yeah,
you can.
So I'm gonna share my screen now because I do an update every day. And so it's pretty fascinating. Someone had asked me, about 6 weeks ago, they said, hey, Bob, the world is really confused about this SARS virus or this COVID virus. Should we be frightened? That's what they said. And on that very first YouTube video, I said, no, we should not be frightened. Fear is not good for the immune system, but we should be proactive. If we know that this virus is coming, and it appears that it is, this is the time to get really healthy. This is the time to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right. This is the time to increase our whole foods intake. This is the time to increase supplements that are known to enhance immune function. Things like vitamin C, things like zinc, herbs like echinacea, astragalus, reishi. These are things that everybody can do. They're readily available. They don't require a prescription. Start nourishing your body, mind, and spirit. Meditative practices, good night of sleep, reasonable exercise, lots of fresh air. These are things that we can be proactive about. So here's one thing I know. I don't know a single healthy person, either directly or indirectly, that has been knocked out by this flu. When you start looking at Italy, over 99% of the deaths in Italy had 1, 2, 3 or more significant medical conditions. The biggest demographic that's suffering are people over the age of 70. And in Italy, they measured them over 80 and over 90. And that's where the biggest death rates were coming from. So Sweden took a really good role. They said, if you're at risk, if you're an elderly or ill, well, then you should quarantine yourself and let the rest of us mingle in terms of herd immunity. But here's the data just of this morning. This is from the Worldometer that keeps track of births and deaths. And, if we take a look, first of all, the deaths caused by malaria, I don't know if you need me to blow that up maybe a bit, but deaths caused by malaria, 269,000 deaths from malaria already this year. The world should be doing something about malaria. How many people are infected with HIV? 41 million. Now let's take a look at the seasonal flu death. 133,000 seasonal flu deaths, and compared this to COVID, we've got nearly 97,000. So the seasonal flu has killed significantly more people than COVID. Now, this is what our CDC, we're going to talk about America. It's easy to look, cdc.gov. These were their estimates for this flu season. They estimated between 38 and 54 million cases. Maybe I can blow that up a little bit. They figured that would be 400,000 to 730,000 hospitalizations. On the low end, they said there would be 24,000 deaths, US alone, and high would be 62,000 deaths. So right now we're at about half of that. I don't want to belittle 12,000 deaths. I do have to wonder how many of those were not really COVID deaths. And let me tell you, so they passed a law here in the States that if a hospital has a COVID death and it's filed, they get more reimbursement from the federal government. So if someone comes in with stage 4 cancer and they had a day to live, they test positive for COVID, they're a COVID death. Now that's what I'm hearing now. Do I work in a hospital? No, but I hear it from plenty of sources. If that's what's going on, that's a scam against the statistics. But here are the worldwide statistics. There are plenty of graphs on the COVID cases. So this gentleman here, if I were to actually, maybe I will separate that out. Dr. Bruce Aylward is his name. And he has graphed out what's going on in China, or what happened in China. So China peaked and fell. Now, when you look at China, China didn't know what they were dealing with. Remember, this virus was discovered in 2019. So December 30, I believe, was the day. So they didn't start quarantining China until February, where there was enough interaction for herd immunity to take place. That's what all the experts are saying. So basically what happened is China peaked and China fell, and they're saying, look, if we just let this run its course, it's going to peak and it's going to fall, and we may overburden the healthcare system. So that's something that we certainly want to be careful about. Now we take a look at what's going on Here, these are the world increase in cases on the timeline drawn out by the World Health Organization, and it looks like the entire world has peaked. Now, we can look at country after country. Italy got a lot of press. They peaked. They're on their way down. Spain got a lot of press. They peaked. They're on their way down. South Korea got a lot of press. They peaked. They're on their way down. France got a lot of press. They peaked. They're on their way down. Most of the world has peaked, and they are on their way down. The US, not quite sure yet. New York got hit really, really hard. So there's an epidemiologist out of New York. He says, look, New York is so population dense. There's 20 million people in New York City that it's very common for a person to interact with over 100,000 people a day while dealing with mass transit and the subway system. So New York, it's true, New York got hit very hard. I have friends in New York, I should have put their quotes there, and they said, Bob, we're doing fine. Our medical doctors are great. Our system is prepared for it. It's true we have a lot of infections. It's the sick people, sadly, that are getting hit the hardest, but we are a very resilient group. So now we're going to look at Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. And this is a woman from Sweden's Karolinska Institute. I have visited the Karolinska Institute. This is where the Nobel Prize is awarded. And here's what she said. The strategy in Sweden is to focus on social distancing among the known risk groups, likely the elderly. So who's known risk? Well, if anybody were HIV positive, they should be quarantined. If anybody were on immunosuppressive medication or chemotherapy, they should be quarantined. Anybody over the age of 65 with increased vulnerability, in all probability, should be quarantined. Then she said, we try to use evidence-based measurements. Now, is there any evidence on this particular virus? Well, some people are going to say no. I would actually point to the evidence of China. China had their herd immunity in place, and China appears to have eradicated the problem altogether. Peter Wilhelm's son, do you know Peter? I think you do a little bit.
Yeah, I met him, once.
Peter is a great man. He's a functional medicine doctor, top functional medicine doctor. I realize I spelled his name wrong. Peter Wilhelm's son, just an awesome guy, an author. He's written about 20 books at this point. I reached out to him this morning, today, April 10th. And here was his reply back. He said, hi, Bob. We have a much less strict quarantine policy compared to Norway, Denmark, USA, etc. But we have better preparation and safety net than many countries. Now, I really don't know what he means by that, but I trust that Sweden has a very good health system. Stockholm has been the epicenter with lots of cases, and our medical system is very strained, but not as much as strained as New York City, parts of the US, Spain, Italy, etc. Stockholm, which I've been many, many times, has a very dense population with a lot of interaction. And I'm sure there was plenty of it before, the news got out that this was a risky virus. Stockholm is probably peaking within a week, but other parts of the countries are seeing some rise and will peak in a few weeks. We are balancing voluntary quarantining with less stress on private sector and jobs. It has already cost the US economy $2 trillion. How do you make up for $2 trillion? And we're just getting started. Norway, Finland, and Denmark has much less cases per capita than Sweden, but they have strictly shut down their countries, so they are in more grave economic consequences that will take longer to kickstart the countries. Analysis, different studies with different strategies and results of different countries will be interesting to compare in the next 6 to 12 months. And then he says, hugs to me. Peter's always hugging everybody. He's one of those phenomenal guys. But let me share the exact up-to-date data on all the countries that he's mentioning. So this was the SARS pandemic. SARS stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. Notice that it took place November of 2002 to July 2003 was basically when it was over. This is July, this is November. So keep in mind, the first couple of months, nothing going on. The last month, nothing going on. This is the CDC, the US government data, says the outbreak lasted about 6 months. We see the bell-shaped curve. You know, I could take the graph that I use or the curve that I use for everything else from the CDC or from the World Health Organization and superimpose it right on top of that, and you'll see that it's the same curve. We see the same strategy happening wherever we're talking about. It rises and it falls. Now that curve's a little tighter if you want me to tighten it up, but you get the idea. MERS, this was another coronavirus. The intermediate was a camel. So this one was, isolated to the Middle East. And this basically had 2 peaks. So we had a peak in Saudi Arabia, and then we had a peak in Korea. But both of these epidemics, there was no quarantine, there was no panic. This one had a 30+% death rate statistically. Much, much worse than what we're seeing here. Now, this is Sweden's data as of this morning. If I were to pull the graph over, which I will do just very, very briefly, what I show is where they peak out. This is 800 cases per day, 600 cases per day. So I put those lines in so people know where they're at. But notice this appears to have the bell-shaped curve. Sweden may have peaked out. Then we go on to Norway. Norway has half the population of Sweden. So guess what? The scale is 1/2 of what Sweden. It's the same line, same scale if it were the same population density. When we look at Denmark, again, half the population of Sweden, Denmark likely has more cases than Sweden. And then finally we come to Finland, which appears to have less cases than Sweden, but the curve is the same. So I put all 4 on the same page, and you'll see that they all appear to have peaked. They all appear to be on the backside, but Sweden has let their economy run, has let herd immunity to take place. They haven't crippled the economy, and they don't appear to be any worse off in terms of health. Now, this concept of herd immunity, basically herd immunity happens when so many people have already been exposed that the disease is no longer spreading. This is what happens every year with the seasonal flu. Now, Marcus, I don't know when's the last time you had a seasonal flu. For me, I think I was a kid. You know, I in my entire adult life, I became a health nut, 37, 38 years ago. So I have not had a seasonal flu probably in 40 years. So I don't even know what that's like. But every year they have a seasonal flu. Some people talk about it. Some people get shots. I don't get shots. My family doesn't get shots. I don't know that anybody in my family has ever had a flu. But have we been exposed to it? Well, I bet we have. I might even get my system tested for these COVID antibodies because I suspect I've been infected. Who cares? I never had a symptom. My daughter had a friend who was in Mexico on vacation with her boyfriend, and when they came back, they required mandatory testing. Both of them tested positive for COVID. Neither of them had any symptom at all. So it was voluntary quarantine. No one locked them under lock and key. They said, look, stay at home for 3 weeks. Then you're fine. No symptoms at all. That's what healthy people experience when one of these 10 quintillion viruses enter our system. So herd immunity, here's what's known. Natural infection leads to natural immunization, and this is far more effective. According to the medical literature, natural infection, natural defense is much more effective than vaccines. Now, there's a study, it's a military study, and I can pull that up for you, that actually showed that the flu vaccine significantly increased the risk of someone getting a COVID infection. So this is from the journal Vaccine, and it looks at the flu vaccine and respiratory virus interference among Department of Defense personnel. And here's what they found. This is right out of the study. And if people want to look up the PubMed ID, I always encourage people, read it for yourself. Don't take my word on it. Don't take any supposed expert's word on it. Use your own resources to find out what's really true. So this is what it said within the article. Vaccine-derived virus interference was significantly associated with the coronavirus. And if you type in PubMed ID 316-07599, it can take you right to the article. And with Google Translator, if people aren't real strong in English, I think many people in Finland are, you can translate it to your local language and get the exact wording from the article. But here's the table from the article, and I can blow it up for you. But here they looked at respiratory virus and odds by vaccination status. When they looked at the coronavirus, the odds ratio of getting the coronavirus, if you had been vaccinated, went up by 36% over baseline. And when you look at a p less than 0.01, this means that this is very highly statistically significant, that the probability that this happened by chance is almost zero. So it's considered a hard fact that when people were vaccinated for the seasonal flu, they had less defense against this coronavirus. And that just goes with what is known and published in the literature. Natural infection is well known to be superior. So this immunologist out of New York, Knut Witkowski is his name, 20-year researcher, PhD, Rockefeller Institute. He says we are crippling not only the economy, but the citizens and prolonging the damage of the illness because we may be preventing herd immunity with this quarantine issue. He says it's absolutely foolish. And you can find him on YouTube. You can look up his credentials. And, you know, me being a natural guy, you know, keep in mind, I've studied both. I did spend time in the hospital working. I do have a nursing degree. I've seen what medicine can do. I'm very grateful for medicine. If people need a respirator, they need to be at the hospital. If people have a bacterial infection that is severe, they may need an antibiotic. Antibiotics do not work against viruses. Now, they may prevent a bacterial pneumonia in response to compromised lungs in response to this virus, but a strong immune system can keep this virus in check. And even the World Health Organization says 80% of people that are exposed will be either mild or asymptomatic to this bug.
We have this idea that the bat is spreading viruses to the animal and from there to the humans. And then I think that maybe the bat is like the Batman. And so we need to be the Superman so we can handle it. And so we have to have that kind of strength and immunity and keeping our like Superman health. How do you see that one?
I love the way you think, and I agree with you. We want to be like Superman. We certainly want to have, you know, what we need to beat this. But I'm going to pull up a new reference because there's some very significant doubt that there was not some intermediate step in this virus. So a bat infected a camel, the camel infected the human. That's what they're calling MERS. A bat infected a civet cat, and that's what they believe caused SARS-CoV-1. But now they don't know if the bat infected something called a pangolin. Notice they have a question mark on the bottom there. Why? Because this virus is only 99% analogous. And 99% may seem to be very, very close, but genome.gov says that human DNA and chimpanzee DNA are 99% analogous. So there seems to be a big step. People that talk about evolution say, okay, it probably took 1 million years if we were indeed evolved from chimpanzees. 1 million years. And the reason they talk about missing links is they can't find a missing link anywhere. So it looks like humans and chimpanzees, probably one did not lead to the other. That's what science is suggesting. it would take 1 million years to go from that pangolin form of the virus to the form that we currently have. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories. Some people think this was created as a lab, as a bioweapon. I don't want to get into conspiracy theory, but there's holes in figuring out where this virus came from. But what's the biggest bioweapon out there right now? Fear. It's not this virus. We seem to be handling this virus pretty well. Sweden's a great case study without major intervention.
But this virus thing, because there is no actually real treatment for that. So that's why I understood we need to stay healthy. That's the only thing we have.
Yes and no. So let me share with you this study, and I'm glad that this is open. So this was the International Journal of Biologic Science. It was published March 15th of 2020, and they looked at China because China had run its course. Now, traditional Chinese medicine, these are herbs and lifestyle choices that are proven to enhance the health of the people. When you look at traditional Chinese medicine, they don't treat an illness, they treat a person who has some type of imbalance that made them less than ideally healthy. So notice in the peer-reviewed medical literature, when people took traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine, that would be ventilators and things they do in the hospital, their probability of progressing to a severe condition was only 7.4%. Less than 1 in 12 people progressed to severe illness when they did healthy strategies. In Western medicine, it was almost 1 in 2 people progressed to severe illness. Now, how many of these people died that did traditional Chinese medicine? Once they were severe, about 1 in 11 people died. That's pretty significant. That'd be 9%. But notice that 4 in 10 died when they did not do traditional Chinese medicine. So even now, the medical literature says when people take on healthy strategies, even if they are infected, they're not likely to become severe, or if they are severe, they're much less likely to die. So what's the difference in becoming severe? Over 600% less likely. And what's the probability of death? About 450% less probability of death, even if you are severe. So the natural strategies are now very well proven, even if it's only in one demographic. So I think the world should look at this and say, let's find a way to help people get healthy.
Have you noticed this similar, because you use some natural medicine yourself, that with the Western medicine, with natural medicine combined, there's usually better results there can be?
In my entire patient base, and remember, I have 28 years of patients. There was one patient who we treated 15 years ago, and once again helped him with a shoulder injury that was not involved with the full program, didn't do any nutritional supplementation. He's a guy that did progress to severe category, but he's recovering. So I don't know of a single person in my database of many, many, many thousands of patients that has had an issue with this virus that did a natural complete program. One guy who did a partial program is recovering, but did deal with severe complications. Only one of my entire patient base. One person. And Houston, Texas, by the way, is a metroplex of over 10 million people.
Yeah.
We have as many people in Houston in surrounding areas as the whole country of Sweden.
I have this one question left to you. You have mentioned that making the better you makes the better world. Can you still say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my mentors say that there literally is one consciousness. We're all connected to the same source of consciousness. My actions affect you even if you're across the world. So there was an MIT PhD many, many years ago. The generic term for it is chaos theory. But when they made an extreme mathematical model, they actually proved that a butterfly beating its wings in Australia could cause a hurricane off the coast of Mexico, because the world is that interconnected. And if we are interconnected, That means if I have a loving heart and a loving spirit and I radiate goodness for the planet, I take the entire energy up of the planet, even if I do it ever so slightly. But if you and I do it together, we make it stronger. If we can get 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 people loving the planet, we're going to do a lot of good. The people I know that live in love, live in faith, don't have anything to do with fear, the people in their circle are healthy, happy, and thriving. They're sharing resources. They're sharing things that make everybody's lives better. One of my mentors said this: there's not a single problem in the universe that love can't solve. Fear is not love. Fear-mongering is not love. Protecting our elderly, that's love. Protecting our immune compromised, that's love. Forcing little kids who have almost no risk to stay home from school and then not be able to interact with their friends, to put their parents in a compromised circumstance. I know parents that are single moms that suddenly they have to run all their activities and homeschool their kids and keep them out of trouble. This is a challenge. And so they do it as loving as they can, but literally anything that we do that improves the love in the world improves the healing capacity in the world. Anything we do that interferes with that takes away from the healing capacity. So we have a simple mission: be our best self, eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right every day. Know that we're mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, social, financial, and impactful beings. And if we love ourselves and love everybody around us, that impacts positively all of those life areas and makes for a better world. So a better you, a better world, a better me, a better world, us together, a way better world.
Yeah, that's a great way to end this. And I want to so much thank you for your time and all this great knowledge, and because you have so long experience. So it's not just the science, it's science combined with experience, and I think that's matter. You can really talk about experience, what you have seen. So it's a huge value for people to hear that information from you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Marcus, thank you for that. But I'll share with you, they say the best teacher is experience, other people's if you're smart. So I'm going also to world-renowned epidemiologists that are not paid off by special interest groups. And this is the story they're telling. This will come and go. Herd immunity is best. It makes no sense to cripple the world's economy for something that will go away. It's ancient wisdom. This too shall pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.